Karim Lopez had top 10 buzz before the start of the NBL season, but in my opinion, his start to the season has been a little rough. Today, I'm joined by Ben Pfeifer to break down the Mexican Wings' start to the season and what we're looking to see from him going forward. Ben, thanks so much for coming back. How are you doing? Excited to break down Karim Lopez with you.
For sure. Thanks for having me on. Definitely excited to talk about Karim Lopez, who is just like Dash, a prospect that I like a whole lot, and definitely excited to chat about today.
So I like Karim. I think that I started off this cycle with him definitely in my top 10 range. At one point, he was probably a contender for my top 7-ish or even top 6. This start to the season, in my opinion, has been a little rough, more so based on the eye test than the numbers, if you will. But I think that on defense, he's been looking a little slow. I know that he's coming off an injury, but just looking a little plodding, looking a little slow. I think his reactions off the ball have been late fairly often. And then his scoring, it's been good by the numbers. Looking at them here, he's at around 48% from the field, 55% from three, 91% from the free throw line. So, all of that is pretty solid, but I just feel like watching the games, a lot of that scoring has come in pretty low stake situations. Ben, can you turn around my opinion on Karim this early on this season?
Yeah, I'm honestly not really concerned or like that disappointed with him, to be honest. And I have him top 5 or like top 6, 7, and feel pretty comfortable about it. I feel like he had this reputation as a really awesome defender that I didn't really understand. Like, I totally agree with you on the way his defense has been to start the year, but I feel like that's just how he usually is. And like, he usually just like gets more like, like he'll just like luck, not luck into, but he'll like, just, by variance, like get more steals or blocks in some games. But yeah, I kind of feel like this is just how Lopez tends to be on defense. Like his awareness isn't great. Like his technique as like an X out defender,
Yeah.
pretty poor. But like I thought he was like fine enough in some of the games. Like in the Brisbane game that I blew them. Oh, it was a big blowout. I thought he was fine enough overall. And he is like big and physical. So I think there's kind of potential. And I'm honestly pretty happy with how he's played on offense so far. Like I wish he had just like a bigger role. I wish they gave him the ball more. Like you said, it's kind of a lot of like flow of offense. But I do think he's made the most of his chances. And I just really love his offensive package. Like, and again, obviously is not going to shoot this well from 3 for the entirety of the season. We know that, but the volume is slightly up from last season, and it's been trending up the last couple of years. He's shooting 90% from the line, 10 for 11 from the line. Let's keep that going. But yeah, no, I just think Lopez has still flashed all of the stuff to start the year that makes me like him so much. The crazy power as a driver, some of the flashes of creative ball handling, some connective passing against tilted defenses, some of the shooting, and just like great physicality, rebounding, stuff like that. So this is maybe kind of like opposite of where with Dash, I was like, I think what he's doing right now in terms of like some of the concerns are like, or in terms of like really playing really hot, like I buy it. Whereas like in terms of some of the concerns, even like with that, I'm not so concerned. He's wow, I can't believe you're fading someone who is in the 50, 40, 90 club. 48 from the floor, 50. That's crazy. The 50, that's crazy. In what, like 3 games?
That's the thing, though. I mean, it's what you're saying. His numbers aren't going to stay like that. I mean,
Yeah,
his
I'm not
three-point
like I
shooting is
don't
stay like that.
I don't buy it. Like to be clear, I'm being.
But I will say, though, I do think his shooting is pretty good. Like, I buy his shooting. I buy his touch. I like his physicality. I think that, like, when he gets to the rim, sometimes he can still get, bumped off his spot or, like, get knocked off balance. But, he's still pretty young playing against grown men, so I don't really worry too much about that. I like his toughness. I like his motor as a rebounder, like you're saying. I think
Yeah.
that he doesn't mind getting into the paint and being scrappy and kind of dirty in there, even though like his process sometimes might not be perfect, but he'll get in there and bang. So I do like his offensive package, and I think that you were describing it pretty well. I'm almost wondering. Let me ask you this way: do you think that his entire game, almost in a way, is based out of what he's going to do spotting up? Because everything that you were saying, right? Like his power as a driver, his touch as a shooter, his connective decision making, the way that he can make some passes, but not necessarily be, a lead ball handler or a lead creator. Does everything start for him with being able to knock down those 3-point shots and then, driving a closeout, attacking a defense, forcing the defense into rotation? Or how are you thinking about the totality of his skill set?
That's definitely going to be an important thing, right? Drawing closeouts, attacking off the ball. But I think he's like the fact that I think he can be so good as a driver. I think you can unlock that in different ways, like we talked about in early offense, face ups. I think off of the move and stuff. I think you or someone else clipped like the some of the good plays he's had as a roller this year,
Yeah, yeah.
which he wasn't really doing last year. But I think like he certainly has the size and the skill sets, like theoretically do, and it's cool to see him make. I think like he had a good short roll pass to the corner, and he scored or drew a foul on one of them. So I think just the fact that he has these other ways that he can apply his skills, where I think at his ceiling he's probably going to need to get the 3-point shot working, which like I said like you, I buy his shot, and I think his shooting profile overall is good, especially when we're thinking about it through the lens of like, I don't need Karim Lopez to be an elite shooter. I just need him to be good enough so defenses don't just ignore him. Like that's the bar with a lot of these players. And I do think there's like a ceiling outcome for Lopez. And I also want to mention, not as young as Dash, but one of the youngest players in the class is going to be, I think, 19.2 on draft night. So another, all of the things about young and productive with Dash, I think apply to Lopez for me. But I think there's but like just answering your question, I think there's a lot of different ways where he can apply his skills off the ball, whether that's as like a big at times or on the move, but spot ups are going to be important for sure. And I'm curious to see what he can do as like a, because he, at least last year, he was like a comically efficient driver. I was looking at this at some like a couple months ago, and I just took a bunch of guys in like my top 30, which is kind of outdated. And it was insane how good he was. By far the leader in points per possession, true shooting, free throw rate on drives of literally anybody else in this draft class that I looked at. Obviously, the sample was really small. It was only 46 possessions. But still, like he was so productive last year in that way that I really do think. And like I think the eye test matches for me. Just like the way he moves, he's so powerful, but also like skillful and polished, which I think is kind of rare for me and makes me think there's still more room for him to grow because he's such a good athlete. It's not like he's a guy who's just like all strength. I do think at least on offense he's explosive. I agree that he's not looking super quick on defense right now, but I think that's also probably because he just like reads the game slowly. And I think sometimes it's just like he doesn't realize what's happening, and then his feet are mixed up, and then he's not in an explosive position. But yeah, offensively, I think he has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I think, his first step and stuff like that, even though it hasn't been looking that great to start the season, I do think that it will probably look better as the year goes on and he starts getting healthier. I do think a big part of it is what you're saying as well, right? Like if he's reading the game slowly on defense, then it doesn't really matter how quick he is if he's late to react. But definitely on offense, I mean, we saw all of that last season with the driving that you were saying. I think that even if you look at some of his tape with the Mexican national team as well, different context, different levels of competition, but there you can really notice, how different of an athlete he looks against lower level competition, which in some ways is valuable too. So yeah, I like everything that you're saying about Kareem.
Yeah,
I
because
like his
players in
offensive
like the
package.
U.S., right, who play high school and college, like
Yeah.
they're, people are unconsciously like, they're being compared to their peers. Whereas like in terms of physical maturity, obviously in college, especially now, there's a lot of older players, but Not the same as a pro league for sure.
And with Dash, I mean, you were just touching on it, but Dash's environment, I think in the NBL is so much more structured, and I just, flat out his team is better. Let me just say it that way. His team is going to be better. With Karim, his team is going to be worse. I think that, a lot of possessions, like we were just kind of talking about, it's just, okay, you get the ball, figure it out, or now I'm going to pass the ball to you, you figure it out. Not really a lot of structure or, rhythm to what they do. So I guess my question to you, Ben, is given all of this and given that, again, similar to Dash, the NBL is a different environment, what are you looking to see from Karim from now until the end of the season?
Well, one, I want to see where the 3-point shot level's out. That's just like an obvious where it's. I just want to see what kind of volume, what kind of level we get there. But I really just want to see him like up and maintain his aggression as a scorer. Like you're right that it's not like he's not in as good of a situation as Dash, it seems, but we've seen him like take over games in the past. He did it some last season where he can just be unstoppable in the open floor as a driver, especially when his shots are falling. And I think last year he could fall into being a little too passive on offense, where I think this year he's been a little better, but definitely that's there as well. And then just seeing, can he continue to acclimate as like an off-ball defender, getting better at reading closeout situations and like 2v1 disadvantage situations, like things that aren't necessarily easy, but stuff that definitely, it's hard to know by just watching tape like whose fault defensive miscommunications are, or like who to attribute it. Like usually if I'm watching a player and just in a vacuum, I see a miscommunication, I'm probably not going to put it on either player just because I don't know and I don't want to make a misjudge. But like if a player is in miscommunications over and over and over again, then maybe there's a pattern. I think with Lopez, that's how it is. Like it's usually the breakdowns involve him, and in that case, like on an individual play, you probably can't tell like whose fault it is, but over the course of and just like learning and soaking up stuff about their defensive scheme, when they like to switch and when they don't like to switch. Like Lopez, I think at times doesn't like process the off-ball switching necessarily as quickly as he will eventually one day as he gets more reps and gets more just experience as a basketball player. And I think with Lopez, that's where like I think his athleticism gives you enough of a floor on defense where there's so many players who are physically gifted and technically and mentally poor on defense as 18-year-olds and then become totally fine in the league. And I don't project Lopez as like an elite NBA defender. If you did, then I understand being more concerned than me, though.
No, I think, yeah, I think that his upside is probably more so linked to his offense and his defensive outcome.
Yeah.
I think he'll be fine on defense. I think, like, yeah, his size and probably his toughness gives him a decently safe, I guess, sort of threshold that he can sort of
Right.
hit.
Like
But
assuming he develops offensively, like I feel like he's at least going to be like all right. It's like
yeah,
he's going to be a body. He's not going to make a ton of mistakes. Hopefully, as he just gets better on that end. And like his stock numbers are good. He does get blocks, especially because he is big and he's athletic. But yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, his numbers, if you look at them, I think that, if you watched 0 games of Karim Lopez and you just looked at his numbers towards the end of the season and you looked at his size and his background and things like that, you would probably be convinced just through those things. So it will be interesting to see. I think what you were saying earlier about, where the 3-point shooting will end up, that will be important. Last season, it ended up around 30 or 31% for the league, I want to say. So hopefully that ticks up. I would like to see it around, hopefully, 35, 36, 37% by the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, I like Karim on offense. One last question here about Karim before I let you go, Ben. Thinking about his NBA range of outcomes, is there anyone in the league right now or any sort of recent draft prospect who he reminds you of that maybe, people watching this video who haven't yet gotten a chance to watch him, can sort of think about as they do?
Yeah. I think he's got a pretty, like I said, I trust his floor just because of his athleticism and his productivity and his ability to score on drives. I think these guys were very different prospects and players overall, but as drivers, I think some of what Denny does in the league and is developing in kind of reminds you of what Lopez could do. Like, so dominant in the open floor with his long strides and speed and power, drawing fouls, but also, Denny's developed his handle to where he can run pick and rolls and use his long strides and his power and his explosiveness. And I think Lopez, I think a much better scorer than Denny was at the same stage. I mean, much worse at a lot of other things that makes them not really as comparable as players. But like, I do think he could be one of the more impressive like young drive scoring wings in the league, and that's really valuable. Like that's a very valuable commodity, regardless of where like everything else levels out. And that means to me he has like a very interesting ceiling. I don't know exactly how high it is. Like I'm not sure if I think I think he could make an all-star team, like 2021 on good efficiency with some good defense on a good team in a weak conference, like that kind of thing where he's like the 40th, 30th, 35th best player in the league at his peak. But I think that's pretty damn valuable. And I'm very happy taking that in the top 5 of most drafts, honestly.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on Floor and Ceiling. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you taking the time to let me pick your mind about Dash Daniels, now about Karim Lopez. I'd love to have you back on the channel at some point as the draft cycle continues. But one last time, you can remind everyone watching where they can find all of your awesome work at. I know that you've just released some good stuff as well, so take it away.
Yeah, just my Twitter is at BJPF_. My YouTube is my name, Ben Pfeifer. That's where I'll have all the videos on high school scouting stuff. Like I just dropped the rankings piece where I ranked my top 25 for 2026, the senior high school class, which I'm having a lot of fun digging into. Obviously, NBA and draft cycle starting, tons of content on the way. So yeah, just like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Two prospects I like a whole lot. So it's good to talk through what my thoughts on them here.